We are not going to shy away from the difficult topics on this channel. Today we're going to talk about whether or not you should live in an HOA. There are very few topics in Florida real estate that elicit a stronger reaction than when you start discussing HOAs. I want to read to you some things that I found when I was researching this topic. These are comments on other realtors' videos on the topic of HOAs. HOAs harass people for stupid stuff. Voluntarily stepping onto a bear trap would be a better choice than buying a home in an area with an HOA. Like, even the pros of HOAs sound like cons, and the cons of living in a non-HOA sounds like a parody of a rich person complaining about unrelatable things. I want to move to Orlando in a couple of years. I do not want to live in an HOA because I want to have a pet cow or two. We'll talk about that one later on. I'm kind of making this video from the point of view that there are a lot of clients out there, a lot of buyers out there who don't want to live in an HOA but are realizing that they can't find the sort of house that they want that's not in an HOA. I'm not here to try to persuade you to love HOAs, but I do want to kind of give you a clearer picture of what an HOA is and what it isn't, and why maybe you can consider one if you are strongly against one. For those of you who think that an HOA is going to be the answer to all your problems, we'll talk about maybe what they are not capable of doing too. I hope you will hear me out as we try to find if there are any pros related to HOAs. And stick around to the end because I am going to share with you some of my favorite non-HOA areas in Central Florida. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Krista and I'm a realtor here in Central Florida, and I've been helping people buy or sell houses in this area for 11 years. And if you'd like to reach out to me, here's my contact information. Please feel free to drop me a text or give me a call. And below, underneath this video, there's also a link to my calendar so you can set up a Zoom call with me, which will take 10 to 15 minutes, and we'll just discuss your move to the Central Florida area and figure out how best to tackle that. So let's jump right into the topic today. So let's start off with talking about what an HOA is. An HOA, or a Homeowners Association, is a group of homeowners within a residential community who have come together, whether by the developer when they originally built the community or they've come together later on, who want to form a group to create a cohesive and a clean atmosphere in the community. Sounds great, right? Why all the hate? Well, let's take a look. The number one reason why people dislike HOAs is because of the fees. Now, I do find that a lot of people have the misconception that HOAs are going to cost hundreds of dollars a month. A lot of them really are not very expensive. There are many HOAs in Central Florida that are about $100 a year, and some of them are even voluntary. And what you might get for that $100 a year, commonly like a key to a gate that would allow you to launch a canoe from the community lake. Or it might be taking care of the entranceway sign to the community. You know, the sign that says something like Heavenly Estates or whatever the name of the community is. So you're just paying towards contributing to the maintenance to that item. There are, of course, communities that are going to be hundreds of dollars a month, typically condos. Not really talking about that in this case. I'm focusing on single family homes. But if you are paying hundreds of dollars a month, they are likely providing you with a gated community with a guard. So with a guard booth station, so it's a very, very secure area. You are probably getting access to tennis courts and swimming pools. They may be cutting your grass or doing your laundry. No, none of them are doing your laundry. I think that might be a good idea though. I would probably want to live in an HOA if it would do my laundry. So you are getting more, and those more expensive communities are obviously going to have stricter rules. Even within a community, sometimes the HOA fee isn't identical throughout the community. So if you have a larger lot or a larger home, sometimes your fee is a little bit higher. Sometimes certain phases of the community when they were built may have different fees. So you do want to verify that with the HOA if you're going to be buying a home. A lot of times the information can be incorrect on the MLS. So make sure that you know what the fees are before you go into it. And my point in this is just to let you know that not all HOAs are going to have super high fees. Number 2, regulations. The second main reason why I find that people don't want to live in an HOA is that they are afraid of the regulations. Here be very clear, you need to get a copy of the rules and regulations and the covenants of the community in order to find out what the regulations actually are. Please don't rely on secondhand information. Don't even ask the homeowner, hey, what am I allowed to do here? What am I not allowed to do here? Because just because they think it's true doesn't necessarily mean that it is. For instance, I recently sold a home with an HOA community, and the rules and regulations stated that no one could throw balls in the community. I'm sure there's an interesting story about why that was required, but if you're an older person or you've already raised your family and you don't want to have kids outside, shooting hoops, that might sound like heaven. If you have a bunch of preteen boys in your family, that may not work for you at all. So do make sure that you get a copy of those rules and regulations and read them yourself. But sometimes the rules aren't as strict as you may think they are. So often I hear people say, I don't want somebody telling me what color I can paint my house. They do kind of give you a list of colors that you can choose from commonly, but it's not like they're going to tell you, no, you can't paint your house gray. They're going to give you some guidelines, like you have to use this shade of gray. If you want to make a navy blue front door, they're going to tell you what shade of navy blue you can use. And that's to keep a cohesive atmosphere in the neighborhood. And sometimes those colors change, so you do need to check with the HOA to make sure that the color that you want is still on the list, because that's when you get into trouble, is not knowing the regulations. And let me also point out that there are certain jurisdictions that are not homeowners associations where they also will dictate to you what color you can paint your house. And those are, of course, historic districts. So if you're buying a home in a historic district, be it DeLand or Mount Dora or Sanford or Winter Park or downtown Orlando, you are going to have to abide by those rules. And they will also impose fines if you say don't use the historical color that they ask you to. And they can be pretty strict also. Again, no fee, no homeowners association, but a historic district will make you abide by similar rules. For a lot of people, they just don't want to follow the rules and regulations of an HOA, and that scares them off. But let's talk about the flip side for a moment. So yes, you can paint your house whatever shade of gray you like and have whatever navy blue color you want on your front door. And that's great, but let's talk about your next door neighbor. Let's say they like pale pink with lilac shutters and maybe some aqua trim. You come home one day and their house has been repainted, and you think to yourself, how can this happen? Who do I contact about this? They can't get away with this. But you're not in an HOA, and code enforcement doesn't dictate what color they can paint their house. And let's say, for instance, you want to park your lawn service trailer in your driveway. Well, you're not in an HOA, so you can probably do that. But again, let's say your neighbor has 3 kids and they all have cars, and now there are 5 cars in their driveway, and some of them are on the grass and sometimes they're in the street, and it's difficult for you to drive around them. Again, you're not in an HOA. There aren't any rules about certain things like that, and so now you've got to deal with it. And if you get tired of them and you want to sell your house, well, guess what? All your buyers see this pale pink house with 5 cars in the driveway, and it scares them away too. So, again, there are reasons why the HOA exists. The rules and regulations may be difficult for some people to swallow, but they're there for a reason, and sometimes they're beneficial. Number 3, know the difference between HOA and zoning. So in the beginning of the video, I read a comment from a woman who said she could never live in an HOA because she wanted to have a cow or 2 when she moved to Orlando. Well, even if you're not in an HOA, you probably are not going to be allowed to have a cow. And that is because you have to live in an agriculturally zoned piece of land for that to happen. Even chickens, you're not supposed to have chickens in most parts of Central Florida. Do people have them? Yes. But that goes against the zoning of the property in a lot of areas. So that's not an HOA, but it also doesn't mean that you can do just whatever you want. And many jurisdictions even have regulations concerning the number of pets you can have. So again, just because you're not in an HOA doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. Number 4, what about new construction? So often I get calls from people who want a brand new home but do not want to be in an HOA. So you have choices then. You can purchase land and have a custom home built on the land that's not in an HOA area, but that is going to be surprisingly expensive. I know a lot of you are seeing national home builders who have built a whole community, and you're, noticing that you can buy a home for $250,000 to $350,000. When you start getting into the custom market, you're probably looking at least add another $100,000 onto that. You're just not gonna be able to get it built and buy the land for that kind of a price. So that can get exceedingly expensive really, really quickly. So for those of you who really, really want new construction, you are probably gonna have to consider living in a community with an HOA, or I think consider why you feel that you want new construction. When I really push people to tell me why they want new construction, oftentimes they say it's because they feel the home will be safer during hurricanes. This to me sometimes seems counterintuitive because that home hasn't really been tested in the case of a hurricane. There are homes in Central Florida that have been around for 110 years and made it through 110 hurricane seasons. So definitely you should consider older homes too, if that's your main fear. Yes, your homeowner's insurance will be slightly less expensive if you have a brand new home. But I know people who built a new home, custom built, and during hurricane season, every single one of their windows leaked water because they hadn't been sealed, or that step was skipped when they were building it, and they ended up with flooding throughout their home. So just because it's new doesn't mean it's better. And that's something that I think that everybody should keep in consideration. So as promised in the beginning of this video, I want to talk about some of my favorite non-HOA areas, if I still haven't managed to convince you that you should consider an HOA. So just speaking in generalities, because there are literally hundreds of communities and areas where you can find non-HOA houses. And I think every single town in Central Florida, you will be able to find a non-HOA home. But just generally speaking, if you find homes that are built in the 1970s and earlier, they are less likely to be in a homeowners association. If you find a home that's on like half an acre or more of land, it is probably, although not exclusively, not going to be in an HOA. Houses on double lots are less likely to be in an HOA. So HOA communities are typically going to be much newer homes, and then it becomes much more difficult to find a non-HOA home. So I searched in my entire MLS, which is the Greater Orlando Area MLS, for new construction not in an HOA, and I found 97 houses total. That's out of like literally thousands of homes, because there are homes from all over Florida in the Greater Orlando MLS. There were not a lot of choices, but within like roughly an hour of Orlando, I found a handful in downtown Sanford and a handful in Deltona. And that was just about it. Most of them were on the coast on either direction, so not really close by. And they were very, very expensive because they were custom homes. So in that kind of $250 to $350 pocket, Sanford and Deltona was where I found some new construction that's not in an HOA. So thinking of some areas where you can find large concentrations of non-HOA homes, some of my favorites include Belle Isle, which is a city within Orlando. It has its own police force, really, really cool area. Houses are typically older, and there are HOAs there, but that you can get homes for sure with no HOA, or an optional HOA that might provide you lake access if you want to contribute to it. Altamont Springs, especially around the Altamont Mall, a lot of those houses are not in an HOA. Any of the historic districts, again, you can live near a historic district but be just outside of it, and you don't have to fall under the auspices of the historic district, but you can still be in a non-HOA, nice home with a bigger lot. Deltona, very, very few HOAs in Deltona. DeLand, same thing. If you want more land, you might consider Geneva or Osteen or Sorrento. Plenty of houses there without HOAs. So it's going to be a balance between, do you have to have a new home? What school district do you want to be in? And are you okay with an older home? And then we can certainly narrow down the process and figure out where the best non-HOA home for you might be.